What's up, MyFi friends? Glad you're here. Excited about this episode today. Hit subscribe wherever you're at. Follow us on socials. Y'all know the dealio. I got my friend Ryan Humbert on the show from the Shootouts. Great Americana, alt country, kind of maybe bluegrass at times kind of band. They're all over the place. And we have a great conversation about how awesome Americana alt country music is. And whether you love punk rock or hip hop or rock or whatever you're into, you're going to love this conversation because we talk about everybody from Marty Stewart to Rob Zombie. And we had a lot of fun. So make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're at. And make sure you follow us on socials at MyFi Podcast everywhere. You find all the info on the website as well, myfipodcast.com, YouTube. We're everywhere, Stitcher, Google, all that sort of stuff. So just hit subscribe wherever you're at. And you won't miss anything because we got some cool episodes coming up. And this episode today is fantastic. So glad you're here. Let's get into it. All right. Yes. Great episode today. Again, my friend Ryan Humbert from the Shootouts, a great band. They're all from Ohio, and they're obviously out. They're promoting a new record that if you're listening to this on February 24th, when we're going to drop this episode of 2023, or after, which is the only time you can listen to it, I guess. That was kind of dumb, but if you're listening to this, the record's out. They got a new record out, Stampede, the Shootouts. It's amazing. I talk about this several times during the show, maybe too much. But Anywhere But Here is my jam on this record. Features Buddy Miller. Incredible record, top to bottom. It's I think Ryan, he may not have said it exactly this way, but it's kind of like country music for people who say they don't like country music. Think Americana, alt country. It's just great. And so you should go listen to the record. This is their second record in a year, actually, that's come out. They had a record called Bullseye come out last April. And so second Stampede is actually the second record in the calendar year. The record sounds great. It's awesome. We're going to talk more about it. Anyway, got me thinking about records that I just love the way they sound, because this Stampede record is one of those, for whatever reason, I just like the way it sounds. And if records hit me, like sonically, if I just like the way a record sounds, I'm usually kind of in. I want to hear, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes that has to do with like, whether it was recorded to tape, which I always love when that there's something about those records in the 70s and 80s and, early 90s that were made on tape, and just how warm and awesome they feel. So I do love that, but it's not just that vibe. It's just like whether I like the sonic quality of what's going on. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily good or bad. It's just, do I just really, I don't know, do I like the way it sounds? So it got me thinking about some of my favorite like sounding records. And so hopefully you know what I mean. But I want to talk about a few of those, and we'll hit record of the week, and then we'll get into the episode. So just a few of my favorite sounding albums, and maybe you've heard some of these, maybe you haven't. If you haven't, go listen to them, especially if you can find them on like a physical format, especially some of the older ones that were like done on tape, mastered to tape. I think you'll get a little bit better of an idea of what I mean when I say I like the way they sonically sound. So the first one I'll talk about is the Buckingham Nicks record. Before Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joined Fleetwood Mac, they made a record called Buckingham Nicks. It is not on streaming services. You can find some singles and things like that on YouTube. But as last I checked, which was just a few weeks ago, I couldn't find the Buckingham Nicks anywhere on streaming services. It's an incredible sounding record. And there's a story behind it that Lindsey Buckingham was actually cutting some of the guitars on that record, and Mick Fleetwood overheard those guitars, him recording at Sound City in California. And that was what led Mick Fleetwood to invite Lindsey Buckingham to join Fleetwood Mac. And Lindsey Buckingham said he would only join the band if his girlfriend could come. And that's how Stevie Nicks joined the band as well. And then Stevie Nicks, wrote and sang so many iconic songs for Fleetwood Mac. Lindsey Buckingham is an incredible guitar player. And so if you never heard the Buckingham Nicks record, maybe you can find it on YouTube or something, or if you're lucky enough to find a copy of it on vinyl somewhere or something. It's just a great sounding album. Next, Living Color. They're like late 80s, early 90s. Really late 80s, they got their kickoff. Their album Vivid, their debut album, I think it came out in 88, I think. The lead single from that record, Cult of Personality, is like a cultural hit. Like it gets played at sporting events and stuff like that. It's a massive, incredible song. And that song almost like overshadowed how good the rest of the record was as well, because that song kind of became like a cultural phenomenon. The video on MTV was huge. It had some great political quotes and things in the song that just like made the song so important and so big and so impactful culturally, that I think it overshadowed a little bit how, and it's due that, trust me. But because that song was so big, I don't think people, really grasped how great the record is and how great it sounds. They had some great players. Vernon Reed's the guitarist in that band. There's great players. They're great players. The drums sound amazing on it. It's really open and rock. There's not a ton of overdubs on it or anything. It's just a great album. Sounds awesome. If you never heard it, Vivid, the record by Living Colour, go check it out. Next is Ryan Adams' self-titled album. And it was kind of in the season where he went back to recording on tape, which I think he's done most of his career. But there were some songs on that record, just the way that the guitars sound and stuff. I mean, I love Ryan Adams as an artist. I've seen him several times, and I'm glad he's making records again. I know he went through some personal stuff, but this record was in the middle of kind of some mess for him, I think, personally. And so the songs are just really vulnerable and really well written, and the album was just really well recorded. There's some times when I hear hi-hat on this, and if you're a musician, this may make sense to you. If not, it may not, but the way hi-hat sounds on a record, the way drums sound in particular, but like hi-hat, kick drum, snare drum kind of a thing, when I just hear a drum groove and it sounds really amazing, that draws me in. And this record definitely has some sounds on the drums, especially the way the hi-hat sounds on some of the songs like count-ins and things like that I just go, wow, that just sounds amazing. And I know that sounds weird or whatever, but anyway, Ryan Adams, his self-titled record, I don't even remember. He releases so much music, I can't even remember sometimes when stuff comes out, but it was like maybe like 2015, 2016, something like that. And then next, Temple of the Dog. Temple of the Dog, it's a self-titled album, Temple of the Dog. It includes members of Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, and they kind of came together to make this record in honor of the singer Mother Love Bone, who passed away. Andy, oh my gosh, I forgot his last name. Andy Wood? Is that his last name? I think. Anyway, his first name's Andy. He was the lead singer of a band called Mother Love Bone that was hugely influential in the Seattle scene and kind of launching the grunge, whatever movement in the early 90s out of Seattle. So they did this as kind of a tribute to him. There's a song called Hunger Strike that was a single off that. And Pushing Forward Back, Say Hello to Heaven. There's so many great songs on this record, and it's kind of one of my go-to vinyls that I listen to just because I love the way it sounds. Chris Cornell's vocal sounds amazing. The drums sound amazing. Matt Cameron played drums. Ironically, he was in Soundgarden and later also in Pearl Jam, and in both bands at the same time. He played drums on this record. It just sounds really awesome. If you've never listened to anything but Hunger Strike, you should listen to that whole album. There's a great vinyl pressing from 2016 that it just sounds awesome. It's a great press of that record. And then lastly, Radiohead in Rainbows. It's a little bit more of an electronic album, and I'm sure that they probably, I don't know. Sounds like they hit tape. But you never know with Radiohead. It just always sounds good. And in Rainbows, most of that record is just really like in your lap. Like it's really in your face. It's like the record's just right in front of you. And from the moment that record starts with this like drum machine groove, and then the drums come in over it and everything with 15 Step, which is the opening track on that record. It's just amazing. Guitars sound amazing. Vocals sound amazing. Sounds amazing. Anyway, so go check those out. Buckingham Nicks, self-titled, Living Colour, Vivid, Ryan Adams, self-titled, Temple of the Dog, self-titled, and Radiohead in Rainbows. All just some of my favorite sounding albums of all time. Let's talk about Record of the Week. I got a great group of used albums from my friend John Carden at Carden Records that I talk about a lot because they're like our local record shop here. And one of the ones I picked up, this Record of the Week, it's the Less Than Zero soundtrack. Less Than Zero is a movie in the 80s. Let's see. This was on Def Jam after Rick Rubin started Def Jam Records. In 1987, this came out. Here's what I thought was cool. It was like, there's some great songs on here, but it's the covers that do it for me. Slayer covers Inagata Davida. on here. And there's some great songs too, like LL Cool J, Going Back to Cali's on here. The Bangles, Hazy Shade of Winter's on here. But the one that gets me on this, and if you're watching this on Spotify video or YouTube or whatever, you can see Poison, as you guys know, because I talk about them all the time, because it was my first concert and I love hair metal. Poison covers Rock and Roll All Night, which if you've listened to many episodes of the podcast, you also know I'm a Kiss fan. Poison covering Kiss. I mean, come on. And this was $2 because Cardin Records is dope. So I got this for $2. Less Than Zero soundtrack. If you want to hear Public Enemy, Bring the Noise, LL Cool J, Going Back to Cali, Poison covering Kiss, and Slayer covering Iron Butterfly, then you need to go listen to this right away. So Less Than Zero soundtrack, record of the week. Let's get into the episode. I got Ryan Humbert on the show today. Ryan is the vocalist, guitarist, and leader of the fantastic Americana, alt country, whatever. They cover so much sound. Really great. But I'm going to say Americana country, alt country band, the Shootouts. Their new album Stampede is out now. It's their second album in a year. Their album Bullseye is also still very fresh from last April of 2022. This album, Stampede, is getting a load of critical acclaim. People just loving the record, and partly because it's just awesome. And also, it has a lot of incredible guests on it. Ray Benson, who co-produced the record, Jim Lauderdale, Marty Stewart, Buddy Miller, Raul Malo from the Mavericks, Ray Benson, obviously from Asleep at the Wheel. Like, there's a lot of just really great alt country credibility attached to this. And not that Ryan and the Shootouts need that help, because they're amazing. But it's so cool. Ryan and I talk a little bit in the episode about getting to play and record and write with some of his heroes, like Buddy Miller in particular, who is featured on the song that I mentioned earlier. I love so much from the record called Anywhere But Here. They're about to hit the road too, so you can likely catch them because they're just playing, I mean, months on end in tons of cities. I'm going to try to catch them here in Atlanta on March 5th. And you should check them out at Shootouts Music on all their social media, just Shootouts Music. And then shootoutsmusic.com is their website. You can get information. They have incredible vinyl pressings of the record and really cool merch, all sorts of color variations of the pressing of the album too. And you can see all the tour dates too. So anyway, go check them out, shootoutsmusic.com. Follow them, Shootouts Music, on their socials, and check out this great conversation I had with my friend Ryan Humbert. Ryan, how are you, man?
I'm good. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is it Humbert? Is that?
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Yep,
I'm from Louisiana, so I say everything wrong. Unless I'm home, and then I say everything right.
Yeah, right.
You know how it goes. Man, I'm glad you're here. Today, if you're listening to the podcast, today is release day. I mentioned it in the show opening for their new album, Stampede. Ryan's the frontman singer for the Shootouts, guitarist, songwriter, and they have a brand new record out called Stampede. It's awesome. I talked about it in the show opening, but go check it out for sure. How's stuff been going? Y'all have a huge tour coming up. I mean, this is a huge week for you guys. And the second record in a year. That's crazy.
Yeah. Third record in 5 years, if you don't count a little pandemic in there, you know. Yeah. So, boy, I'll tell you what, man. Just a great fun week in Nashville this week to promote the record, and boy, it doesn't even seem real because we didn't even expect to be making a record, you know, so quickly after Bullseye came out. Yeah, and so here we are. You know, that record came out in April of 21. And by September of 21, we were back in the studio, wow. Here we are today now with this new record. We kind of took our time. I mean, obviously we could have rushed it out last year, but we said, you know, let's just really do this right and make sure that we are giving it the attention it deserves, you know? So, we're pumped. I mean, and of course, getting to make our Grand Ole Opry debut the same day that the record comes out, you know, I mean, what an honor.
Huge. Yeah. We're recording this a few days before, but if you're listening, this is, you know, this episode's going to air on release day, Friday, February 24th for the album Stampede. Now you guys are in Nashville, obviously playing the Opry, doing the whole deal because the record's coming out. Where are you guys from? Yeah. Where are you from?
Yeah, from the greater northeastern Ohio area. If you put a pin in the middle of of where we live, all the band members, it would drop you right in the middle of Akron, Ohio, which is certainly kind of, you know, where we got our start, where we have a fan base. And boy, it's really funny because Akron, Ohio is not a hotbed of country music necessarily.
Yeah, I was sitting here just thinking, like, when I think country music, I don't go Akron.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's mostly, it's Devo, it's the Black Keys, it's the Pretenders.
Yeah.
But, you know, Northeastern Ohio has such a rich musical history and really of all genres. I mean,
Definitely.
Cleveland, let's talk about Cleveland alone. Just three names, right? You've got Trent Reznor, Screamin' Jay Hawkins, and Tracy Chapman.
Wow.
all from Cleveland. It's where we played our first show was in Cleveland, you know. So Northeastern Ohio as a whole has such a rich musical history, and we're just hoping to be a part of that list.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. How long has the band been together?
We started in 2015. We played our first show October of 2015 at the Euclid Tavern in downtown Cleveland.
Nice.
Yeah, and you know, this band was meant to be a side project. I mean, we started this as a labor of love. I was doing kind of singer-songwriter stuff and almost a little bit more pop rock, Americana. And I met Brian Poston, our guitarist, and we bonded over the fact that we love real classic traditional country music. Yeah. And we for almost a year, we said, man, wouldn't it be fun to go out and just do this stuff? Like, we don't care if anybody shows up. Let's just go out and have fun for ourselves.
Yeah.
But my background is marketing, and I also believe that anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And so we did it right. You know, we came up with a band name, we dressed the part, we, you know, came up with a full 2-hour set of cover songs we wanted to do. And we went out and we played our first show, and it was electric. I mean, I remember that show and thinking, like, what the hell is this? This is no side project, you know. I mean, it was really, really special, and so yeah, you know, that was it. I mean, we were off and running, and very quickly, but also very organically, started just, you know, booking more shows with the Shootouts, and started moving ahead, and started making traction with that band, and kind of naturally morphed into side project into a full-time project. And here we are now, you know, a couple years later, and, you know, we're releasing our third record as an original project. And as we said, some of these great opportunities that we get to do this week. And, boy, it's really, really been a special and cool, you know, kind of trajectory.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. I feel like for a lot of people, they almost like stumble into the most successful parts of their music career. It's like the thing that you try to do, you know, rarely launches, but it launches you into something else that you really loved, but maybe never saw coming, you know? And being from such a rich musical place, you know, around Akron, Cleveland, Ohio area, growing up there, did you grow up in a musical family? I mean, you obviously grew up in a musical area of the country, but did your family play music, your parents or anything like that?
Boy, you know, not really. There was only one member of my family, extended family even, that was into music. My uncle Brian was a performer, amazing singer and piano player. But he was lived out of the state. Actually, lived in Puerto Rico for most of his life, adult life, I should say. Had a piano bar there at a hotel. It was named Brian's Piano Bar.
Nice.
And he was just an incredible vocalist, a way better singer than I am, and you know, great piano player. Just could pick up a song, you know, just from hearing it. Somebody one time bet him that he couldn't learn a Garth Brooks song because this was not his type of music. He couldn't learn a country song or something like that, Garth Brooks song, by his show that evening. And I remember him calling the house, and we played him a song over the phone, and he learned it, and he went and played it that night. So, you know, again, I didn't really get to spend a lot of time with him. I wish I would have got to spend more time with him. I remember him well and remember him fondly, but the only real musician in the family. Now, that being said, my dad is a big music buff. I certainly think that I get a lot of that from him. And when I was growing up, you know, I would be rooting through his record collection while he was at work and listening to, everything from the Flying Burrito Brothers and Dan Fogelberg, to gosh, I mean, Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Neil Young. I mean, I am a Neil Young fan because of my father, so he certainly fell into that camp, a lot of that type of stuff. Jackson Browne and Waylon Jennings, and, gosh, he even had some of like the Souther Hillman Fury Band and things like that, so it was definitely a big influence was my dad's record collection.
Yeah. That's amazing. Do you remember what, like, when you got to start like opting in, you got to pick out you weren't listening to your dad's music anymore. Like, what was the first record that you like picked up yourself, record or CD or whatever era it was?
I definitely kind of gravitated towards kind of just whatever I was around, at the time. I remember thinking like, there was one record that really did it for me that kind of brought me into my own musically. But before that, it was kind of what what was happening around me. My dad's record collection. Sure. My mom was listening to country radio at the time quite a bit. And that was in the 90s when you could still hear, really great country music on the radio. You could still hear Patty Loveless and George Strait and the Mavericks and Dwight Yoakam. And what's funny is all of those bands, nowadays, where we are as a band, we were certainly, that influence is right in the forefront, all those artists that I grew up with. And that's a lot of the stuff that Brian loved as well. Brian's a few years younger than me, but he still came to it honestly the same way I did. So I was listening to country and listening to kind of whatever my parents would listen to as a kid. And then I was in high school, and I, of course, listened to whatever else was popular,
Sure.
At the time, and when I was in middle school and high school and that. But then I discovered a record by Lucinda Williams called Car Wheels on a Gravel Road.
Yes.
And that record did it for me, man. I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for that album. I remember thinking that album was a perfect mixture of country, blues, folk, and rock. And I hadn't heard anything quite like it at that time yet in my early formative musical career, years. Yeah. And just fell in love. And that was the rabbit hole, that was it, that album. And so then it was Buddy Miller, and then it was Steve Earle and Emmylou Harris. And then finding out who the artists that were working with those guys, and who influenced them. And the next thing you know, I'm on a deep Bob Dylan dive that is ongoing to this day, So that was really the record that kind of did it for me and kind of brought me into the whole Americana scene. And like I said, I was in high school when that record came out, and that did it for me. And I've never left. I've been a huge fan of the Americana world ever since then. And that was even before people really were calling it Americana.
Yeah. I feel like Americana, rock, folk, whatever you want to call it, alt country, whatever you want to call it, there's something about it that just connects people who love all genres. I have conversations with people all the time who are like, oh, I'm super, like, I grew up in the hair metal era, like I was in middle school, late 80s, early 90s, and like that's what I cut my teeth as a guitar player on and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But later, I discovered Wilco and Lucinda Williams and, Sun Volt and Ryan Adams and people who I don't know if it's just that it seems like all those bands have written songs that were covered by other people. They're just, they're creators in their nature. And there's something about the honesty of Americana music that I think that connects with everybody who really loves music, no matter if you love pop music or hip hop music or country music or whatever. There's elements of all of that, like, inside of Americana. And I think there's a track on the Stampede on you guys' new record called Anywhere But Here, which it's my favorite. I mentioned this, I think, before we started recording, but it's my favorite song on the record. And thank you. Yeah, I just love it. It's got a little Counting Crows in there. It's got a little, you know what I'm saying? Sure. It's that people forget like bands like that because they were so successful. I put them in the Americana, kind of
for sure. If they came out today, they would. The Wallflowers, all those bands. If they put out the Wallflowers last record was on the Americana chart.
So good.
It was a great record. And same thing, like you said, Counting Crows, a lot of those bands that were kind of like rootsy rock bands, Soul Asylum even would, they were punky, but they had some stuff that would lean Americana.
Totally.
I think that that is definitely what has made me, I think, a more well-rounded, whether or not a musician is the word or not, but like, you know, I'm not afraid to listen to jazz and then Western swing and then some punk and then some, you know, rock and classic country. And the Americana genre, you know, they've got open doors, you know, and Americana means a lot of things. And honestly, I have some friends that are like, what the hell is Americana? Like, how do you describe it? And I'm like, well, it's a little bit of everything, you know? It takes in the artists that don't have a home, whether you're at the beginning of your career or you're down the road a ways and decide to do something a little different and they don't know what to do with you anymore. You know, I mean, I think that the Americana genre kind of encompasses all of that.
Yeah. I had, a guy, David Ramirez, on the show several months ago, and I went to see him, and he was on tour with a band called American Aquarium that I had never heard of, and they're amazing. And it's the same thing. I listen to these guys when we have conversations with them, and even bigger artists, and their influences are crazy. So like Wilco would tell you, oh, we grew up listening to Kiss, and Ryan Adams is like, oh, I grew up listening to the Smiths. And, you know, it seems like people who make Americana alt country style music, like grew up on all these crazy influences. Were there bands like that for you when you were growing up that were just like way outside of, people hear Stampede and they go, oh, this guy definitely listened to George Strait. He definitely listened to, you know, whatever country artist, but like, you know, maybe you also like were like, no, man, it was Soundgarden for me, or it was like, well, you know, something way outside.
I'll tell you what, the one that I can think of right off the top of my head, and I have friends that know me as like the Americana country guy, you know, that are blown away by this. But one of my favorite bands ever since I was in, I think, like middle school is the band Garbage.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I mean, they just rock, and Shirley Manson kicks ass. And I have loved that band since I was, you know, a kid at this point. And people were like, wait a minute, like you're like Mr. Americana, but you like Garbage? And I was like, I love that band. I'm also, I love the Ramones. I've always loved the Ramones. I mean, so, you know, and here's the thing. I mean, one genre to the next. I mean, most of them are kissing cousins, right? I mean, look at, you know, all this, everything is so incestuous with music, especially nowadays. You know, genres are blurred, lines are blurred, especially in the Americana world. You know, it's kind of like, who cares? You know, good music is good music is good music.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. No doubt. I think that's something that shines in the Americana world, which is how, and something I guess I should say something I enjoy about, as you listen through Stampede as a record, you can hear like the record, every song works together. It's a great cohesive album, but it also, every song sort of stands out a little bit. Like there's not another song like Anywhere But Here on the record to me.
Sure. And I'll tell you what, it's one of those things where I can tell you why that happens. There's a couple things, two reasons. One, every time we make a record, we say, what did we miss with the last record?
Oh, right? That's interesting.
But you know, between Quick Draw and Bullseye, for example, we realized that there were no shuffles on Quick Draw, and there were no songs.
Albums?
Yeah, I know. We were sad about it. So there was no shuffles on the first record, and there was nothing in a minor key. And we said, okay, so let's do a shuffle or two on the new album, and let's do song in the minor key. So, you know, we always kind of just see like, what have we done? What haven't we done? What might we be able to try our hand at? And, you know, again, we don't call ourselves, I mean, I think we probably lump into the Americana world better than anything. But, you know, we get referred to as a honky tonk band. And we certainly are, but also we're not afraid to color outside the lines. And that comes from that influence of guys like Dwight Yoakam and the Mavericks and, you know, and Jim Lauderdale and these guys, Marty Stewart, these guys that will kind of follow their heart and stay within the general umbrella, you know, but not afraid to knock on a couple different doors. And and that's kind of how we've been as a band. And I think as long as we are staying true to our mission statement, which is to make country music that is rooted in tradition and also kind of on our own terms, I don't see a problem with it. You know, a song like Anywhere But Here is certainly, that song is certainly rooted more in like the West Coast California jangle country, the jangle pop rock country. But then you've got a song like Run for Cover on the new album, which
great song.
wrote. Thank you. I wrote after a huge rock pile binge, and also a huge fan of the Blasters, which is the wet. And are they an Americana band? Sure. Are they a country band? No, maybe not. But if all of this stuff informs, the Americana world, the country world, I think it's fair game. So we don't have a problem with that, is what I should say, being able to kind of just dabble in different parts of it. And I think the one thing that has worked out for us is that, knock on wood, we've been able to kind of cover a lot of bases and do them well. I think you're never going to hear us trying a metal song, right? But to do some stuff that is just a little bit left to center and that still falls within what we do. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah. It's funny though, the Americana genre, alt country genre, it never loses credibility to me, because I think there's something, an emotion behind it. I think that's how, and I'm a huge Soundgarden fan. I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan. Those bands don't need any credibility. They have all the credibility they need. But there was something that Johnny Cash did when he covered Nine Inch Nails, or Depeche Mode, the Personal Jesus cover he did, or when he did Rusty Cage, Soundgarden.
I love that song.
Yeah, there's just stuff that he did to that, and there are artists where I don't think they need credibility, because I don't want to pass on that kind of judgment. But I remember hearing Ryan Adams cover a Pointer Sisters song from the Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack, like 80s, pop, whatever, and he brought this really like emotional sort of awareness to the fact that is a well-written song. There's something about Americana that like exposes something where you may go, oh, that's a cheesy pop song or whatever, and then you play it a certain way and it tells you something about the song that is kind of cool. And are there covers that you guys do live that you just love doing that may be a little left to center, but you guys kind of pull something out of those and do something cool with it?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, a good song is a good song, right?
Yeah.
And I think I've said this before, but I think if the bones are good, if the bones are sturdy, it's like an old house, right?
Yeah.
You can take an old house, and if it's built on the right foundation, you can put a new coat of paint on it and shine it up, So we don't have a problem with that at all either. Same thing as far as doing cover songs and trying to find a way to put our own spin on it sometimes. A good example, I've got two examples here for you. One is a few years ago, we went into the studio and we said, let's just have some fun doing a couple cover songs, and let's pick some stuff you would never expect to hear a band like us do.
Yeah.
And so we did a honky tonk Bakersfield-esque version of an ELO song. And then we did a classic Nashville with strings and piano and backup singers. Sounds like a Patsy Cline recording. We did a version of a Whitney Houston tune.
Oh, is that anywhere? Are those anywhere where people can hear them?
Yeah, you can go to Spotify and you can hear those. We did I Want to Dance with Somebody as like a Patsy Cline tune.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
And then we did Don't Bring Me Down by ELO as like a Bakersfield Dwight Yoakam sounding tune. So
nice.
Same thing. I think you can have fun with songs. I mean, like you said, look at what Johnny Cash did with Hurt. Trent Reznor has gone on record to say that's no longer his song. That's Johnny Cash's song. And then I think another good example is on our new album. We did a cover of a gentleman by the name of Michael Stanley, and he is by no means a household name. But if you lived in northeastern Ohio and you were anywhere from the age of 80 or younger currently, Michael Stanley was a household name in that area. He was our regional megastar.
Nice.
This guy still to this day holds attendance records that most major artists have not beat or couldn't beat. He literally, we have a big shed in Akron, holds 20, 30,000 people, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
In the 80s, when he was in his heyday in our area, he sold that out 4 nights in a row.
Whoa. Holy
I mean, and
cow.
our the old Cleveland Coliseum where the Cavs used to play, he sold that out multiple nights in a row. I mean, this guy literally holds attendance records. He was Cleveland's native son. Unfortunately, he passed away from cancer in early 21, and I heard a song of his called "I'll Never Need Anyone More." And I said, boy, there's something about that. And strangely enough, I heard his acoustic version first. And I thought, boy, that is a beautiful song. And, I feel like we could do something with that. That song should be a hit single. It should be a song that, it has a life of its own. And then I went back and listened to his original version, which came out in a record called Heartland in 1980. And it is big, overproduced, bombastic, Springsteen style rocker,
Nice.
And, it's funny then to hear his original version, then hear our version of it, because it is pretty different. And, but we put our own spin on it, largely based off of his acoustic version. And we put it on the record. And what's funny, when I brought it to the band, I think they thought I was kind of crazy. I think they were thinking of, the big bombastic 80s version. And I said, no, just trust me. I think we can do this. And now it's all of our favorite song, so, and it's our new single off the record too.
Oh, nice.
Doing pretty well for us. And
it's
been fun to hear from Michael Stanley fans in Northeastern Ohio that are like, man, this sounds so different from his, but we love it. And I think they're proud of the fact that we're trying, we're carrying on his legacy a little bit and getting a song of his out there a little more. So, I mean, again, that it just goes back to, if you've got a strong song, if the bones of the song are good and you can put your own mark on it, put a fresh coat of paint on it, there's nothing wrong with that.
Have you been able to connect with anyone in his estate or his family, like to talk to them about covering the song?
Yeah, one of my very good friends played guitar in his band for 25 years, and I met Mark probably about 6-7 years ago, and we became very close friends. I produced some records for him. His name is Mark Lee Shannon, fantastic singer-songwriter out of Akron, and happened to be in Michael Stanley's band for many years. And so I know Michael's management has heard it, and some of the most of his band members have heard it, and I would imagine at this point his daughters have heard it as well. But again, we've had nothing but support from everybody in his camp that heard the song and reached out about it.
That's awesome. You said something a minute ago, and I wrote down a question that I wanted to make sure I came back to, because you talked about some of the guys who are on the record. Ray Benson, Buddy Miller, Marty Stewart, Jim Lauderdale, Raul Malo, legends in their own right. But you mentioned like Buddy Miller as somebody who influenced you, a while back. Was it? And he just happens to be on this song that I keep bringing up because it's my favorite song on the record. But Anywhere But Here features Buddy Miller. Was it cool? Like is this the first time you've gotten to work with people that you would go like, these people are influences and legends and all that? And was that just a dream come true?
Oh, I mean, every one of those guys, I mean, they are heroes of ours, and we did a little bit of that with the last record. We worked with Chuck Mead, formerly of BR 549, which was, that band was a huge influence on the Shootouts. And Chuck produced the record, and he sang on a couple songs with us on Bullseye. But with this one, it was talking to a member of our team, a radio rep, and she said, yeah, maybe you should ask a couple of your friends to be on this record with you. And we said, okay, maybe we will. And then it just kind of kept happening. And at that point we were already working with Ray Benson on the album. And somebody said, oh, did Ray call all his friends? And I said, no. I said, he knows all those guys. But I said, actually, that was all me, all us, just relationships we had. Or
that's awesome.
People, and with Raul Malo, for example, we have played multiple shows with him over the years, and he's just such a gentleman. And the Mavericks, again, a huge influence on myself, and I think I would say the band. And kind of a cool story there. He sings harmony on that song we talked about, I'll Never Need Anyone More. And when I was a kid and my mom was listening to 90s country, they had an album called What a Crying Shame. And there was a song on there called I Should Have Been True. And my mom had the cassette single for that.
Nice.
And while I do not get a lot of my musical influence from my mom, that the 90s country and all that, all that stuff comes from her. And she had that cassette single and she drove it into the ground. And I remember being a kid and falling in love with that song and with that band. And, she unfortunately passed away unexpectedly in 2018. And we had a chance to go see the Mavericks together, and she'd met him multiple times with me and stuff. And so here we are now, a few years after that, and here he is singing on the record with us. It's definitely a full circle moment. It's something that means a lot because, he was one of her favorite singers, and that he became one of my favorite singers. And now here he is singing on the record. And so, it's something that means a lot to us, and hoping that wherever she is, she's happy about it.
Yeah, man. Are there, sorry about your mom. I'm glad you guys had those moments though, and that stuff to share.
Thank you.
Music kind of becomes that vehicle for things. And I've enjoyed sharing, not just records, but like live experiences with my kids too. And, that stuff just creates incredible memories that every time you hear songs, it takes you back, to good places.
And again, like I said, my mom was not like a big music buff or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, certainly, but she was at every one of our shows. I took her to see Bob Dylan.
Nice.
Probably, I think it was 2 years or so before she passed, we went to see Bob Dylan, and she had never seen him before. And I was like, okay, well, you're in for, in for a treat. And she said, like, yeah, I remember Lay Lady Lay, she knew the songs that she grew up with. And so it was a bit of a shock for her, but, she was a trooper, man. And I got her into took her to a lot of shows with us or things like that. And, that I guarantee you my mother would not have went to see Lucinda Williams 4 times if it wasn't for me dragging her to the show,
Yeah.
But, so yeah, it's while I wish she were still here, of course, I cherish the memories. We had a great relationship, and she was more than just a mom. She was a best friend to myself and my sister. Yeah. And so, it's while I wish she were still here, I'm glad that I have such strong memories of her, and that in a way we're able to, pay tribute to her. And we did so on the last record as well. I wrote a song on their album Bullseye called Another Mother. And it just basically talks about, and you could apply it to any relationship, right? But it talks about, look, always say I love you, always take that opportunity to let those people know, that you care, take the opportunity to check in on them, spend time with them, because you never know when it's going to get taken away from you.
Yeah, man. Those memories early on, my first concert, I remember I have mentioned this a couple times on the show, but I saw Poison and Slaughter with my dad for my 11th birthday. It was like what I wanted for my birthday. And my dad was like so cool about it, but he loved good music too. And so we've seen ZZ Top a couple times, and Eric Johnson, he loves guitar music, and stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's a cool bonding thing.
That's kind of, my dad and I as well. I mean, we don't have a ton in common necessarily, but we both love music, and we like a lot of the same stuff. And, I'll tell you what, this summer I had a lot of friends, the same thing, kind of like the garbage conversation from earlier, that this is not a show that I probably would have thought to buy tickets to, but he called me and said, hey, I've got 2 extra tickets. Do you want to go? And I think I'm going to ask your cousin to go. And I said, you know what? Sure. I have the night off. We happen to be in town. And I went to see Rob Zombie with my dad. Yeah. With my dad. And had a blast. And I kind of documented the whole thing, because going to a Rob Zombie concert is very different from going to a Wilco concert, or something like that. So I, of course, documented the whole thing on my Instagram stories, and I had a lot of people that were like, what are you doing at a Rob Zombie concert?
Yeah, dude. That's fantastic.
And you know what? It rocked, man. It totally kicked
dude,
ass,
his band's amazing. I mean, John Five, his, I guess ex-guitar player, because John Five's out with Motley Crue right now, but his whole band, super amazing. And I've been...
Well, and... talk about showmanship, too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean...
He's Alice Cooper. He's a crazier Alice Cooper.
Yeah. It's funny because I was talking with somebody about that show, as somebody that is, on stage quite a bit, and I've been on small stages and big stages, and, I've been on plenty of stages where there's no theatrics whatsoever. it's still a stressful, crazy day. I can't even imagine what goes into that show. And it's funny. I hate to say this, but it's almost as if the music, it's not secondary per se, but you know what I mean by that, right? Like the show is so intense and there's so much going around the show that it is right up, it levels up with the music, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like about the whole experience. It's not just the music.
Yes.
It's like the whole experience.
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
Right?
And they just put so much, I mean, Alice Cooper was and Kiss and bands like that were like the preeminent, showman kind of bands.
Sure.
But yeah, what was your first show? What was the first concert you ever went to? You remember?
The first concert that I remember going to was Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band.
Nice.
Yeah, I think my parents took my sister and I, and I'm pretty sure that's the first one. There may have been others, but that's the one that I remember like wholeheartedly going to. And then I even remember going to a couple 90s country concerts with my parents. I remember them taking us to see Brooks and Dunn and Reba McEntire together as well, and so, and I've been lucky enough to see some pretty great concerts over the years as well. And,
what was your favorite? What sticks out?
There's a couple memorable ones. One that is absolutely one that I'll never forget is I was at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville for Levon Helm's Ramble at the Ryman.
Oh,
yeah, and they ended up recorded that whole thing for a DVD and CD, and his special guests were, a bunch of no names, right? He had Steve Earle and Sheryl Crow and John Hyatt and Emmylou Harris, and then halfway through the show they brought out an unknown artist by the name of Robert Plant.
Oh my God!
It was, and what's funny, if you buy the DVD or CD. A lot of the artists that were actually there that night didn't make the album, but I remember Levon saying, "Oh, I have a friend here with me tonight, and little surprise for you all. And here's Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, and they came out and sang a song together. And Steve Earle. I mean, it was an absolutely amazing lineup. So here you are seeing Levon Helm, which should be enough, and he's backed by Larry Campbell, and and then it's just a sea of amazing." Legends and talent. That is a show I'll never forget.
Yeah,
that was pretty special. And I'll tell you what, most of the time to see these kind of one-off special shows, you've got to be in Nashville, New York, or LA. But Cleveland, for a long time, did the American Music Masters series from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah,
and boy, I got to see some incredible shows there. Tribute to the Everly Brothers was one of the last times that Don Everly was on stage. Was at that event. Got to see that. Got to meet Don Everly that night, which was, the Everly Brothers have been a huge influence on Emily and I as singers. That event, got to see the tribute to Sam Cooke, which we got to watch Aretha Franklin and Solomon Burke sing "A Change Is Gonna Come" together. Went to the tribute to Jerry Lee Lewis, and he was not supposed to be performing that day. He was just supposed to be there. They weren't even sure he was going to attend. Next thing you know, at the end of the night, he comes out, sits down at the piano, and plays "You Are My Sunshine." I think that's what it was. It was definitely an old cover song like that. And then standing next to him at the piano was Chrissie Hynde from the Pretenders. And, just those shows were incredible. The lineup for those shows, again, something that you wouldn't typically see just anywhere. I got lucky to see a bunch of those events, and I could go on forever about just fun concerts.
Yeah, man, no doubt. Well, dude, listen, I appreciate so much you taking the time out to be on the show. I know that. Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast and it's out, the new album Stampede from the Shootouts is out right now. You can stream it anywhere. Go check it out. I'll put stuff in the show notes like we always do on MyFi, so you can get straight to the record on Spotify, Apple Music. They have a tour that's starting the 25th, right?
Yeah, we basically starts Saturday the 25th. We're out for about 3 weeks. As again, we just spent the whole week in Nashville doing a whole bunch of promo and some shows, and again, honored we get to make our Grand Ole Opry debut. If you're listening to this today, we get to do it tonight. Yeah.
And if you missed it, if you listen to it a day late, you missed them at the Opry. But hopefully you watched it. Yeah, you can watch it somewhere, whatever.
God, what an honor that is, to get called and to get asked to show up and play your music on that stage is, pretty mind blowing. And, it's funny. We've asked some friends that we know that have recently made their Opry debut. And we said, you have any advice for us? And a friend of ours, Caitlin Butts, that we just recently met and had a chance to catch up with her. And we said, do you have any advice for us? And she said, well, let me tell you, it's just as terrifying as you think it's going to be. And I said, that doesn't help anything.
Yeah, that's super comforting. Well, I saw the tour is super extensive. So if you're listening to the podcast, go check out Shootouts. Shootoutsmusic.com is their website. You can find all the information there at Shootouts Music on all their social media. There's 3 months of solid dates. I saw you guys are coming through. I'm outside of Atlanta, so I'm going to try to catch the show when you guys come through town here. And if you guys are anywhere where you see they're coming, go check out the Shootouts. I need to go back and listen to the Bullseye record a little bit more. I was so focused on this new record, just prepping for our chat today, that I need to go back now. I want to listen to Another Mother and some of the songs that you talked about from that record as well. So
thank you much.
Man, thank you so much for being on the show, Ryan. Y'all go check out the Shootouts.
Hey, of course. Thank you so much, Lee. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Have a great one.
You too.
That was fun. I love when guests on MyFi are just throwing names of artists out like crazy, and we learn where people are inspired from, who inspired them, what records inspired them, what shows inspired them, all that sort of stuff. Great conversation with Ryan Humbert. What a great dude, too. The record's awesome. You need to go listen to Stampede. Make sure you follow at Shootouts Music everywhere, and check out shootoutsmusic.com because they got all the tour dates. And I mentioned in the intro, they got some incredible vinyl variations, like some different colored pressings and stuff of the record. Stampede's out now. You can stream it everywhere, obviously. And you should go try to find that Whitney Houston cover that we talked about in the episode of them. I'm going to go find that right now. I'll link that in the show notes, actually. I'll put that in the show notes. I got a lot to put in the show notes this time because we got so many bands that we talked about. It's rare. We get all the way from Flying Burrito Brothers to Garbage and, from George Strait to Rob Zombie. That's a wide array today. Anyway. Please tell a friend about MyFi. Follow us on social at MyFi Podcast. Check out the website, myfipodcast.com, and look for more great episodes. We got some great guests lined up for the rest of the year. We're getting into it great. If you missed, go back and listen to the episodes we've done so far. We just had OK Kennedy on the show, great up-and-coming pop star, J.D. Clayton, who released a record this year, another country Americana artist whose record is just blowing up. He's on a huge tour right now, doing great stuff. And then Dylan Nash was also on the show, kicked off the year talking about his band Lily, who played Miley Cyrus's New Year's Eve bash with Dolly Parton and all that stuff. They're a great, heavy, sort of really just modern rock band from LA. So go check out the past shows. You can do all that on the website and all that. And tell a friend. Make sure you're subscribed. Follow us on socials. And until next time, have a good one.